Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to slow things down. We're going to take a step back and peer behind the curtain of our daily lives to examine the hidden code of modern consumerism. And just to be clear, we are not going to be looking at the dry mechanics of the economy or supply and demand or, the simple exchange of money for goods, none of that. Instead, we're taking a journey into the deep, often entirely unconscious psychological architecture that governs almost every single purchasing decision we make. We're going to explore the piercingly honest, maybe slightly cynical, but absolutely profound theories of Jean Baudrillard. He was a sociologist who recognized, long before the era of social media influencers, by the way, that our relationship with objects has fundamentally changed. So get comfortable, clear your mind, and let's unravel the title of this presentation: Why Expensive Things Make Us Feel More Valuable.
I want you to consider a question that we honestly rarely ask ourselves. Why do you buy things you don't actually need? Seriously, think about it for a second. Look at the objects surrounding you right now. Maybe it's a high-end smartphone in your hand, a luxury watch on your wrist, a premium car parked in your driveway. What genuinely drives you to purchase these items? If we're being completely brutally honest with ourselves, it's rarely about survival, right? It's rarely about basic comfort. We tell ourselves all sorts of stories. We say we appreciate the craftsmanship, the engineering, the durability. We rationalize it. But what if that entire inner monologue is just an alibi? What if the real reason you bought that incredibly expensive item has absolutely nothing to do with what the object actually does?
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to completely shatter a very naive economic myth, and that is the myth of utility. For centuries, economists have relied on this concept of use value. Use value is simple. It's just what a thing does. A washing machine washes your clothes. A refrigerator keeps your food cold. A basic car gets you from point A to point B. But Baudrillard argues that in our modern, saturated society, use value has become almost entirely irrelevant. We no longer consume objects for what they do, we consume them for their sign value, which is what a thing says. The objects we buy are stripped of their practical everyday function and they're transformed into a vocabulary. We aren't buying tools anymore, we are buying words in a silent, continuous conversation about exactly who we are and, much more importantly, where we rank.
Okay, let's dive into this because we really need to define the foundational concept of this explainer: sign value. Sign value is defined as the manipulation of objects as a language code to establish differences and manufacture social status. I want you to think of consumption not as the act of eating or using up a resource, but as a completely unconscious system of exchange and communication. It is exactly like a spoken language. Just as you might choose specific words to sound educated or maybe casual or authoritative in a meeting, you choose specific brands, specific zip codes, and specific aesthetics to transmit a message. You are operating within an invisible code. It's this structured matrix where every single object has a designated meaning, and it gets that meaning not in isolation, but in how it compares to all the other objects you didn't buy.
Baudrillard crystallized this reality beautifully. He said, "You never consume the object in itself. You are always manipulating objects as signs which distinguish you." Let that sink in for a moment. When you slip a $2,000 designer jacket over your shoulders, you're not consuming the fabric. You're definitely not just buying protection from the cold. A $20 coat does that. You are wearing a sign. You are arranging a piece of a fabricated identity. You are broadcasting your affiliation to a specific social class, and simultaneously, whether you admit it or not, you are creating a deliberate distance between yourself and those who simply cannot afford that sign. It is a brilliant, silent, and entirely manufactured system of social sorting.
But how exactly does an object become a luxury sign? Well, it requires three very precise mechanics. First off, it absolutely must discard pure utility. If a watch is just for telling time, it has no magic, it's boring. Second, you, the consumer, must internalize the premium price tag. The exorbitant cost isn't a barrier to entry, the cost is the feature. The price tag is what allows you to internalize a feeling of functional superiority. And third, it enforces social exclusion. Luxury goods act as strict mechanisms for social classification. They are literally designed to lock out the uninitiated. The high price ensures that only a select few can speak that specific dialect of the consumer language, preserving the elite exclusive status of the group.
And this brings us to a fascinating, almost tragic phenomenon: the illusion of functional superiority. Because we know deep down that a $100,000 car doesn't actually get us to the grocery store any faster than a $20,000 car, we have to invent an illusion. We convince ourselves that our premium purchases make us objectively, functionally superior human beings. Baudrillard highlights this brilliantly telling anecdote about a commercial traveler, basically a mid-level salesman, who saved up his money and bought the exact same model of Mercedes as the boss of his company. So what happened? He was fired. Literally fired. Why? Not because he couldn't do his job,
but because he violated the sacred code of signs. He dared to appropriate a sign value that was strictly reserved for the executive class above him. You see, before the law of use value, all men are equal. A steering wheel is a steering wheel. But before the law of sign value, there is a profound, ruthless, unforgiving hierarchy. And ignorance of this code is never an excuse.
And this brilliantly illustrates how this hierarchy plays out clearly across different tiers of goods. Notice the jump from a basic car to a luxury SUV. The basic car offers transportation, but its sign value is merely baseline compliance with society. You have a car, great. A luxury SUV offers the exact same utility, transportation, but its sign value projects elite dominance. Or look at the watches. A smartwatch tells you the time, tracks your heart rate, reads your texts, incredibly high utility, but its sign value is just modern practicality. A handcrafted, mechanical Swiss watch, however, it actually does less functionally than the smartwatch. It just tells time, but its sign value is aristocratic exclusion. The brands have written an endless linguistic matrix, and we are just blindly paying for the privilege of reciting their words to establish our manufactured social rank.
But here is the dark side of this entire system. It generates a deeply exhausting, inescapable internal insecurity. Have you ever wondered why we are never, ever fully satisfied? Why does the thrill of a massive new purchase fade so incredibly quickly? It's because we aren't fulfilling actual finite human needs. You can satisfy hunger. You can satisfy the need for shelter. But in this matrix, we are consuming differences. And the demand for difference is completely unlimited. As soon as the middle class catches up and buys the luxury SUV, well, the elites must abandon it and find a new, more discreet, more expensive sign to restore that social distance. This creates an endless substitution of objects. We are trapped on a treadmill, forever chasing elite innovations just to maintain our current social standing. It's a recipe for profound structural anxiety.
So the crucial point is captured in this striking, incredibly cinematic metaphor by Baudrillard. He says, there is no longer any mirror. There is only the shop window, in which the individual is absorbed and abolished. Think about what that means. In the past, humanity struggled with its own reflection, with the soul, with internal morals, with true identity. Today, that mirror is gone. We don't look inward to find ourselves anymore. We look outward into the illuminated shop window. And we do not see our own reflection looking back at us. We see the objects. We see the signs. And in that process of endless contemplation of what to buy next, our true independent self is completely absorbed and eventually abolished entirely into the order of signs. And honestly, this brings us to a pretty stark realization about our modern sense of identity. On the left side of this concept, we have the traditional ideal, an independent human being, a center of autonomous values, strong character, and a singular, unique personality. But on the right, we see what we have actually become, a sociometric node. In this system, you aren't really an individual. You are merely an intersection point of various brand affinities and coded behaviors. You are defined by the media you consume, the labels you wear on your chest, the neighborhoods you aspire to live in. It agitates our deepest insecurities because, if we're honest, we realize that our so-called unique personality is often just us reciting a corporate alphabet. We are playing a combinatorial game with elements that were literally engineered in a marketing boardroom.
But look, recognizing this matrix is the absolute first step to escaping it. The goal of this explainer isn't just to deconstruct the tragedy of consumerism and leave you feeling bleak, it's to empower you. You have to recognize the illusion of status for what it actually is, a fabricated, industrially produced mirage designed to keep you running on a treadmill of perpetual dissatisfaction. Stop speaking their language. Once you truly understand that the premium price tag is not a measure of your worth as a human being, but a mechanism of your control, you can begin to reclaim your independent psychological core. You can look at a luxury good and see it not as some magical token of salvation, but simply as a highly overpriced piece of metal or stitched fabric completely stripped of its mystical sign value.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the hidden architecture of consumption, I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought. Literally, just observe the objects you've surrounded yourself with today. Notice the clothes hanging in your closet. Consider the devices sitting on your desk right now. Ask yourself, who wrote the code you are currently living in? Are you the author of your own identity, or are you simply a localized receiver blindly broadcasting the signals of a consumer society that relies entirely on your insecurity to survive? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the signs around you.